right, so my name is Jeff Barton, and along with the Tadaro family, my family we founded Waterfresh Farm 15 years ago, and been growing pesticide-free hydroponic produce since then. Our goal was to set out to grow a salad. Once we accomplished that, then we figured, well, we need to sell it now. And so we built the barn last year, and we opened it up. And one of our goals was to have this be a community gathering place, a place that could nourish both body and soul. And you know, today's a great testament to that. And we're really honored to have Representative Kennedy here, as well as Representative Dykema and State Senator Karen Spilkma. So from that, I guess I would like to turn it over to Carol, and I think you're going to say a couple words, right?
Love to.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Good morning, everyone, and it's great to be here. It's always great to be here at Waterfresh Farm, because this really has become a very special place in this community. And one of the things that is so wonderful about it is that it takes something that's very steeped in tradition here in New England, here in Hopkinton, in local agriculture, and growing local agriculture. And it takes that concept, builds on that concept by adding on this wonderful innovation, kind of future goals of agriculture. So it takes something that is old and traditional, it makes it new again and very exciting, which is something I'm always reminded of every time I come here. And I love to welcome Congressman Kennedy here, because I think he offers and brings to our district so much of the same. The Kennedy family is so steeped in tradition and the values here in New England and Massachusetts, education, supporting our working families, and supporting our small businesses. And he takes those rich values that his family has brought to the state for so long and makes them new again and brings a new, fresh energy here to Hopkinton. So it's such a pleasure to welcome him here today and to show him what the Hopkinton community is all about. And what Hopkinton is all about, I've found, since I've represented this community, is about building relationships to get things done for the community. And if you look who's here, we've got the Chamber of Commerce, which is so active. We've got local officials here to bring the local public perspective. And we all work together to get things done for the community. The Senator, the Chamber, and to welcome Joe to this great family here in Hopkinton is truly a pleasure. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our Senator, Karen Spilkma. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, Jeff. It really is a great day to be here. I also look out, and I remember when I first became state senator, and Hopkinton did a similar event for me and found it incredibly warm and welcoming and just a wonderful community. And I have to say, Joe, you're in for a real treat to get to know the Hopkinton community, because it's just gotten better and better over, I can't believe, the 8 years that I've represented Hopkinton in the state Senate. It's a community that really puts a lot of emphasis on education, on family, on working together, pitching in and making increasing our quality of life and making our community stronger. Whether it be the chamber, the elected officials, the appointed officials, the parents, all folks involved in this community pitch in and help each other. I have had the real pleasure of getting to know Joe, especially during this campaign. And I have to say, it has been a wonderful experience to get to know him. He's somebody that I think will bring so much to his job, that we are really lucky to have him in Congress representing us. He will be incredibly inquisitive and ask the right questions, and I have to say, with his DA background, kick some serious butt in Washington. So it's something we have a lot to look forward to. He's a caring and compassionate person, and that goes back to not only his upbringing, but his roots of giving his time and his own personal resources to be a part of the Peace Corps that he did. He's, I have to say, quick-witted and sharp. I don't know, and I know my son was a lacrosse goalie for many years, and I know that Joe was a lacrosse goalie, but he brings his unique perspective, coupled with an incredibly hard work ethic. I saw Joe out there on the campaign trail day after day after day, knocking doors, meeting people, taking nothing for granted. And that's why he won. I really believe that's why he won. And he will bring, and he brings that same work ethic, that same hard-working background, caring, compassionate, inquisitive person to his job up or down in Washington. And I think that not only will Hopkinton and his district be better for it, but the whole country, the state and the country will be better for it, because he will do an incredible job. He's already asking questions, and he's already a standout freshman. So with that, I want to welcome Joe Kennedy, give him an opportunity to speak and talk to all of you, and hopefully get to know each one of you a little bit better. It's great to see all of you. Give a warm round of applause for Joe.
Senator, thank you so much for the extraordinary introduction, your kind words, and for making this happen, to be here today. I got to know your senator quite well over the course of the campaign. We did a number of events together out here in Hopkinton and around the region, and one of the pieces to it that I always look forward to, we did a number of, we stopped by, I'm sure, some of your companies. We did a number of merchant walks through downtown. It was great because I got to eat a lot. The food was amazing. But also to get to see the relationship that your senator has with the business community and your community. And to, as somebody trying to run your first race, to see what it means to build those relationships over 8 years and to really represent a community. Was certainly something that I took not just from the meetings that you saw, but from what you learned from sitting down and asking questions and having a conversation, but seeing what that then meant over time. So, Senator, thank you for your example. Thank you for your leadership. Carolyn, it's great to see you again. We see each other all the time these days. But thank you for coming out this morning. You know, when we were, again, I was out here all the time over the course of the campaign. You're always wondering how's it going, how you doing. And I remember driving down one of the streets in Hopkinton, and I saw a big Mitt Romney sign. No, that's okay. And then I saw a Sean Belot sign, and I went, well, that happens too. And then I saw a Carolyn Dykma sign all in the same house. And I went, how'd you do that? But it is impressive. And it is impressive to see, again, what true leadership will do for you when you try to represent a community. And what I took from that was somebody that has gotten to know you, knows your values, and knows that you will always be there fighting for them. And that's your record, and that's your history representing people on Beacon Hill. So thank you both for the tremendous example that you set for me as I try to get started. So thank you, and thank you for the nice words at the end here. To Jeff and the Todaro family, thank you for having us. Thank you all for coming out early after a holiday weekend. I will try to be brief. Dangerous words, obviously, for the new politician, I guess. But hopefully expound for hours on all that I have learned in my 6 weeks now, as being a member of Congress. A friend of mine, just after we got sworn in, and just in my first couple days in Washington, sent me, it was basically a one-line email that just said, good job. And in it was a link to a newspaper article. And I opened the link, and it was, I'm sure some of you have seen this, a poll that came out that said members of Congress were less popular than root canals, traffic jams, colonoscopies, and head lice. So the good news is the expectations aren't exactly high, right? But it has been, it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks since we got sworn in down there, and obviously winding down a campaign, opening up district offices and offices down in Washington, hiring a staff, getting on the committees, the committee process, and then just getting settled in. It's flown by, and we've been working very hard to get up and running to try to provide, most importantly, the district here with a level of constituent service that people have come to expect and demand. And I've gotten to know some of my other freshmen quite a bit over the course of that time. And I have to say, it's been impressive to see folks want to try to find a way to work together, Democrats and Republicans. There's a gentleman from North Carolina. He is as conservative as the day is long. He and I, if you actually look at our platforms, we don't really agree on almost anything. It took us about a week to find something that we actually agreed on. He is the nicest, kindest, gentlest man you could ever hope to meet. And so we've actually developed a friendship. And he will continue to come and try to approach me, to approach other members, other freshmen, other Democrats, to try to find a way to work together. And we recently found one. He's active in his church in Carolina. He's a Presbyterian and has done a lot of international human rights trips abroad, and he's very focused on strengthening international human rights groups, particularly in the developing world in China. So there are ways, it might not be the first order issue, but there are ways that if you are persistent at it, you can find ways to build that relationship. And I think really what is needed now, probably more than ever, is that type of persistence, to try to find a way to work together, because the challenges that our country is facing right now, those affect Democrats, they affect Republicans, they're going to affect everybody. And if we don't find a way to come together, to work across that aisle, to find ways to compromise, then you're going to see some big cuts hit just in a couple weeks with the sequester, which I'm happy to answer a couple of questions about momentarily. But the broader framework of our government and our society, that's going to be what ends up cracking. And so really finding that type of, those individuals who are willing to try to find a way to work together and bridge some of these gaps, to understand that compromise means accepting some things that you don't like, to understand that you don't necessarily love every part of a bill or every part of a package, but that's what's necessary in order to move the ball forward. And I think that at least from this freshman class, there is a recognition on both sides that that's really what is needed to go forward. And I think one of the reasons why I was excited to come out here today and take some questions, but also to ask a few questions, is that it's also something to hear that this community has done very, very well. And with some help of some great leadership, been able to reap the rewards of a wonderful community that ends up having the business community, a thriving business community, but support the local community and vice versa. And you've developed a wonderful place to live, to raise a family, and to work. And it's trying to unlock those secrets of what you have done well, what you wish you could have done better, and where government can help, that I would really love to learn, because what you have done here and those key lessons are going to be what's so crucial, not just to other parts of the district that I represent, but to other parts of the country. And how do we get the economy that has been powering the greater Boston area and parts of Hopkinton, how do you get that to work for areas of the Rust Belt? How do you get it to work for old areas of some of our gateway cities, for areas that have been hurt disproportionately with the shift of our manufacturing base overseas? And what can we do to try to strengthen those communities going forward? So I'm very much looking forward to having a bit of that conversation with you and to learning from all of you how we can help. And the last thing I just want to say to that is, one of the things I learned from my uncle, Senator Kennedy, from my dad, and from some folks that have been willing to shed some advice to me as I've been down in Washington, is that the relationships matter. That issues will change and there's always conflict in that, but that if you're able to spend the time to ask questions, to listen, then that trust that's built up will always transcend the politics of the day. And so what I hope all of you learn from at least my message today is that I want you to think of me in this office as a resource to you. How can this office, how can your congressman help you remove some of the roadblocks that you're finding, whether that's, and wherever that is, whether that's in the business community or whether that's in local issues. However we can support that, we will. If there's a reason why we can't, we'll let you know. But having that conversation back and forth is that fundamental building block to try to form that foundation for that relationship. And I hope that over time, and that is something that has to be earned, it's something that I hope to try to earn over the days and weeks and months ahead. And hopefully, and eventually, just maybe, convince you that I am better than lice and a colonoscopy and a root canal traffic. But thank you all very much for coming. Thanks for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions you guys might have.
I was wondering what you think you could do and what we could do. One of the things that's always sort of in the back of my mind is the whole thought of a nuclear war. That the U.S. still has many nuclear warheads on air trigger alert, and so do the Russians. Or not the Russians anymore, they're the Russians. They're not the Soviets. But what do you think you can do? What is the Obama administration doing? And
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Louise Coleman. I thought my name's Louise Coleman from Greyhound Friends. I'm on the, I live in Sherwood, I'm on the Democratic Town Committee.
Louise, thank you. For those of you that didn't hear, the question was, what can and should the United States be doing to try to prevent the threat of nuclear war? Louise, it's a great question. I know it's something that the President has actually spoken an awful lot about trying to reduce the size of our nuclear weapons, the number of our warheads. It's really obviously the threat that nuclear proliferation and nuclear war. It's not so much that, as you pointed out, the former Soviet republics, Russia and the surrounding areas. The threat is really the proliferation of nuclear weapons from North Korea and Pakistan, and the threat of Iran obtaining nuclear weapons capacity. I think that when you kind of broaden that view out to it's one of the cornerstone issues, I believe, of U.S. foreign policy, and given the incredible pressures that our country is under, that our diplomats are under. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. We had hearings last week on Mali and the threat that's persistent in Mali, throughout parts of North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa and the Sahel, through the Middle East, through India and Pakistan. As one expert recently pointed out to us, in light of the bin Laden raid, you had two options when you looked at Pakistan. You had one in which the most wanted terrorist in the world was living a quarter mile from their version of West Point, and they didn't know, or they did. And Pakistan has the fastest growing nuclear arsenal in the world. So what does that mean for their ability to track and maintain their knowledge of and security of their nuclear weapons? We have to stay engaged. In the United States, I think when you look at the pressures that are on our country, particularly in light of what happened in Benghazi, and particularly in light of the other challenges that we're facing around the world, you've really got two broad options. You can turn isolationist and turn inward and say, we need to contract. Or you can recognize that these challenges, as many as they are and as complex and complicated as they are not, the United States is only going to benefit from being engaged in those areas. We have to keep up pressure and multilateral pressure on Korea. Much of that comes through, obviously, China and through Russia. It's a similar story in some respects with Iran. Much of Iran's support still comes through Russia and China. These are multifaceted problems. They're complex. Pakistan, obviously, being the nuclear power and given the tensions that it still has every day with India. The United States needs to maintain engagement. We need to look for allies. We need to engage the international community and try to make sure that we stem the ability of proliferation and really crack down on particularly the black market and smuggling. And you've seen an effort that has developed over the years to really try to do that as well. So you gotta keep those efforts up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to be here at this location with a sustainable kind of agriculture. And with healthcare being almost bankrupt by chronic disease, there's a real need to put nutrition in the forefront, to get people empowered to know that the food that they eat is their medicine. And I just don't know how much you feel that we can. I know Michelle Obama is really into trying to get kids to eat healthier, but it's it's an economic issue as because of healthcare costs. but it's also could instill, I mean, or bring forward lots of jobs in sustainable agriculture, lots of jobs that develop programs like this. And I just wanted to get your opinion about how we can relate jobs with good health.
It's absolutely, so the question for those of you, just to make sure everybody heard it, was the importance of basically incentivizing healthy habits, healthy eating for the long-term cost reduction for healthcare. And what can we do to really put the focus on maintaining health and healthy quality of life, getting healthcare costs down in the long term in chronic disease and chronic conditions, but also recognizing that that is then going to be a boon for sustainable agriculture, organic farming and others. You know, this is, you're 100% right, and this is one of the big reasons why I am a huge supporter of the Affordable Care Act. About a year ago, I sat down, 6 months ago, I sat down with a man that was the director of one of the community health centers in Boston, and they had devised a program where doctors at that community health center were actually writing prescriptions to the farmers market that would come in on the weekend, and would allow folks to go in and get healthy fruits and vegetables, so that they didn't have to depend on some unhealthy foods that when you came home from work at 9 o'clock at night and then the only thing available was the corner store where you were getting bad food to feed your family. It's those types of initiatives that are going to make the difference. They're not necessarily, you're not going to see the dollar sign make a huge change in a week, in a month, necessarily in a year. But over time, particularly when it comes to the management of chronic conditions, which is one of the biggest budget busters for our healthcare costs, it's trying to delay the onset of diabetes, trying to make sure that we provide people with the information and the access to healthy fruits and vegetables, to healthy recipes. I was in Boston Medical Center about a month and a half ago. They actually have a cooking program where they have some of their patients and clients that come in out of a food pantry, and they do a cooking class to show some of their clients how to cook healthy meals and what they can do on the recipes that they have available out of the food pantry to actually cook a healthier meal. It's those types of initiatives, and making sure that those are no longer just pilot projects, but they do get the incentives to scale up, so that you're going to see huge savings in the long term and try to get our healthcare costs down. Sure.
Hi, Ron Clark, former selectman. In your mind, what's the #1 issue or problem facing the United States, and what legislation would you like to see Congress pass to address that issue?
Question was, thank you, sir. The question was, what's the #1 issue I see facing the United States, and what type of legislation would I like to see Congress pass facing the issue? The #1 issue, I think, right now is getting our economy moving again and getting our long-term debt and deficit under control. I think that there is a way forward with that. Broad outlines of what I would like to see is getting back to this idea of a grand bargain where we recognize that we do have to get our debt and deficit under control, that you don't want to do that at the expense of future generations and our country's ability to innovate and to create the jobs and the education that are needed to capture the jobs 20 years down the line. So that would mean, for me, investments in workforce training, investments in community colleges, investments in education and infrastructure, getting people back to work, building up the infrastructure that we need in order to compete in the long term, getting our roads and bridges and others, building out smart grids. Pairing that with a long-term debt and deficit reduction strategy that gets that debt to GDP ratio in the long term back to a sustainable margin. And I think you can do that. We just had a Democratic caucus retreat 2 weeks ago or so. I talked to a number of other, my fellow Democrats, and there is a way forward. President Clinton came in, that was his message. And it turns out, I think Bill Clinton's pretty good at this, right? So I think when you look at not just interest rates now, at the historic low cost of borrowing, the need that we have for the investments in infrastructure, not just here in Massachusetts, which I'm sure many of you have heard the governor's plan and talk of the governor's plan to make necessary investments in infrastructure, but nationwide. And the recognition that we've got so many of our construction workers that are still unemployed or underemployed. You've got historically low rates of borrowing where you can actually make these investments now at comparatively very cheap money that is going to provide our economy the framework to really power for generations ahead. You invest in the education that we need, but in order to give the markets and individuals and our creditors confidence that we're not just spending to oblivion, you have to get our long-term debt and deficit under control. And I think that there is a strategy going forward where you can say we're not necessarily going to catch. It doesn't mean draconian cuts in 2 weeks to some of the jobs and programs that I think are fundamental to our country. But it is a recognition that we can't keep spending so that our debt to GDP ratio goes so high that creditors aren't going to have faith in our markets and interest rates are going to spike and we're not going to be able to pay our debt. One last point to that. President Clinton said during his talk to us, we spend about 8% of our GDP now in interest on the debt. If interest rates were back to what they were when he was president, that would be about 15%. So if you don't change this, interest rates are going to go up at some point. They are. If we don't change this, that interest on the debt comes out of discretionary spending. And so it's going to cloud out everything else. So you have to find a way forward to this because it's math. They're going to come up. We're not going to, eventually they're going to have to. So let's be smart about it rather than doing across-the-board cuts that almost everybody that I speak to says universally agrees are not the right way to set policy, but there is still, for whatever reason, an intractable political force that prevents movement going forward. And with that, I just want to segue into one last piece and a request actually for all of you. You know, I've been in Congress for all of 6 weeks, and so take it for what it's worth. I've met, as I said, a number of other members, Democrats and Republicans, and the folks in my caucus, the folks on the other side of the aisle, sitting down one-on-one with them, they are all wonderful people. They get along well, they're friendly, they are almost universally impressive folks, they've done impressive things, and they are there representing their districts and deserve a lot of credit and respect for that. As much as I laid forth a vision going forward that I think is the right policy, there are plenty of other people that would disagree with that policy, and that's fine. The question is how can you come to a compromise that is reasonable and going forward? And that's going to mean I'm going to have to give, it's going to mean everybody's going to have to give something. The issue in my mind is that there's a number of folks that are unwilling to give and that is holding up the process. As much as I might like to think that a really eloquent floor speech by me is going to change their minds, it might not. What can change their minds is many of you in this room, you guys are business leaders, you're community leaders, you guys know what it takes to create a thriving community that supports business, that supports your schools, that supports families. People want to hear from you. Other members of the Chamber of Commerce, I might not be able to convince that individual to compromise, but you know what can? A lot of phone calls from the Chambers of Commerce that they represent saying, hey, there's a lot of jobs on the line here, and we need to find a way to come together that is going to meet us halfway. And so you've got a very powerful voice in this debate. I just ask you to use it. And whether that's calling me or our office or other offices, even around the country, joining together and letting folks know that it's okay if you don't get everything you want, but that we need to find some way to come together. That's what this country's going to need. And that power rests with all of you just as much as it does with your elected officials. So I ask your help.
Thank you, Joe. Another round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Joe mentioned that he's on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's also on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, which is incredibly important for Hopkinton with its ever-growing life sciences, biotech, and technology. So, we welcome you back out here for more tours, and I think that there'll be a terrific partnership. I'd also like to turn it over to somebody, but I want to thank the Hopkinton Chamber and Tim Kilduff. Thanks so much for your efforts in organizing this. And Jack Speranza. and the whole chamber for organizing this, and once again, Water Fresh Farms. But thank you, Jack, and do you want to come up here now? Yes.
I know the congressman has to get on the road, so we'll be very brief about this. But I'm sorry to say it's about 30 years ago that I came to the Boston area to attend school and ended up staying. But I was introduced to this funny little road race called the Boston Marathon that I had never heard of before growing up in the Adirondacks, and became quite fond of it. And lo and behold, a few years later I find myself living here in Hopkinton, where the entire world comes to amass on our doorstep one day of the year. And so just as a little memento of your visit here today, and you're embarking on your own marathon of a different kind of version, I would like to present you with something.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
This is a lithograph from which running was this, Tim? The 100th running of the marathon.
Hey, thank you very much.
Hopkinton resident.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you very much. That's spectacular. We'll go right up. We don't have hardly anything up in our office yet, so that's
and Representative Kennedy, Senator Spilka, and Representative Dyke, thank you very much. There is coffee and pastries that just came out of the oven in the last hour or so that are over here courtesy of the Chamber of Commerce. So please, while Representative Kennedy has to go, please feel free to take a moment and relax and have something to eat. Thanks. Bye.